This is also why black DAs matter. I'll go to our next story. Okay, Jamarion Robinson was 26 years old when he was shot and killed, shot 59 times by police in 2016. It was 2.5 years ago, August of 2016, and he was killed in his girlfriend's apartment in East Point, Georgia, near Atlanta. He was shot by a fugitive task force made up of various Metro Atlanta officers and at least one U.S. Marshal. And the early police report said that Robinson fired at least 3 times at the police, but a gun found at the scene was damaged and inoperable. Now the district attorney of Fulton County, Georgia, Paul Howard, is suing the federal government because they are not cooperating in his investigation of the shooting. I talked with DA Paul Howard earlier today. All right, DA Howard, glad to have you here on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
We're happy to be here, Roland.
So let's talk about this case here, the fact that you say that federal authorities are hindering this investigation. Explain why you are going so aggressively after the feds.
Well, this incident involves a young African-American male, 26 years old, who was shot by a group of law enforcement officers, 16 officers to be exact. And the incident took place on the 5th of August of 2016. As it turns out, the medical examiner's reports show that this young man was shot 59 times. We were presented with an investigation from our state GBI investigators, and since that time, we have been trying to determine exactly what happened that precipitated this young man being shot 59 times. We have requested in writing more than 3 times specific information. We have actually had a private conversation with the U.S. attorney here, and we have made several open record requests for information, and we have not received it.
So in this shooting, who has jurisdiction?
Well, it's a kind of strange arrangement because this was a state aggravated assault warrant. It wasn't a federal warrant. It was a local or state warrant that was issued by the Atlanta Police Department. But all around the country, what is going on is the local officials, local law enforcement agencies are connecting or working with the U.S. Marshals, and they then call themselves members of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. But the work that they're performing is still basically state and local functions. And so in this case, what the federal government contends is that this was simply a federal operation and that the local DA does not have any opportunity to investigate what happens. We believe that that's clearly not true because even in the memorandums of understanding between the marshals and the local departments, they point out that, first of all, if there's a question of use of force, then that is to be handled by the local jurisdictions. And they also indicate that each one of the local officers has to follow his own local rules.
So here's what I'm trying to understand. Here. So here you have a young man shot and killed 59 times. And you're trying to get information. They won't give you the information. Well, is the U.S. attorney prosecuting the case? Because if the U.S. attorney's not prosecuting the case, are they acting as if nothing happened?
That's correct. In fact, you get the impression that they are acting as defense counsels for the law enforcement officials that are involved. And that's our very question. We have been asking them, has there been a federal investigation? You would think that maybe there's a federal report of what happened. We have not received any indication that such an investigation has taken place. And if a report was put together, we have not seen that report. And that's one of the reasons that we filed this lawsuit.
Again, this took place 2.5 years ago. And you're not, first of all, you're not even making a judgment as to whether or not these officers were right or wrong. I get the sense that what you're simply trying to do is get all the available information to ascertain exactly what took place to determine what your next step is.
That's absolutely correct. In fact, one of the questions that we're asked is, well, what do you plan to charge these officers with? Well, we're trying to, first of all, to get to the bottom of this incident. We're trying to simply find out the truth. We believe that that's what the family members deserve, that we believe that's what our community deserves, and I think that's what these officers deserve, is to get to the truth of the matter.
Do you believe, and I can understand if you don't want to answer the question, but I have contended that under Jeff Sessions, there was this whole attitude to police officers, we're not going to question you, we're not going to stand in your way. He even said we're going to pull back from these consent decrees because talking about how it was hurting the morale of police officers by having federal jurisdiction. And I kept making the point, I'm sorry, you still are not above the law, that if you're a police officer, local, state, or federal, I mean, you have to abide by the laws as well. And so it sounds to me like even though Sessions is not there, that the Department of Justice is somehow just standing in the way, not trying to seek justice or to seek proper answers, whether to clear these officers or even to pursue charges against them.
Well, Roland, I think what you've raised is a very valid point because it's important for the public to understand that when shootings like this, when they've occurred in other locations in our country, when the claim is made that they're federal incidents, then what that has meant is nothing happens. There is never any prosecution. So I don't think that it is accurate to say that that has only happened with Jeff Sessions, because if the data is examined, I think what we see is that this has been going on for a long time in our country. Mm-hmm. But I think because of people like yourself, that citizens are now beginning to ask questions.
Last question I have for you. I'm reading this Land Journal-Constitution story, and it says the U.S. Attorney's Office in Atlanta, which is under the DOJ, offered to let your prosecutors interview officers, but with restrictions on what they can ask, which the DA said wasn't acceptable. Restrictions?
I thought that was crazy. We're investigating the death of someone who has been shot for 59 times. And it's a death that happened in my jurisdiction. And I just can't imagine the Justice Department indicating to a local district attorney that you could ask a question, but you're simply limited in the approach you can take. I find that that is unacceptable, and it's fairly reprehensible that they would even make such a suggestion.
Well, Fulton County DA Paul Howard, we certainly appreciate you joining us. We're going to stay on top of this as well. Certainly keep us abreast of if you get any response from DOJ, and we certainly would do our part to ask questions here in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much for having us on today.
Teresa, I'll start with you. This is, I mean, you have a U.S. Marshal, one U.S. Marshal involved. The rest of them are local and state. But to completely ignore a DA, he was shot and killed 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm. And it's, again, a terrible time in this country where, and I'm glad they're saying they're kind of putting in the onus of the citizens that actually need to step up and ask more questions. Because right now, especially with this case, it seems like, when there's no communication, there's lack of responsiveness, there's not going to be anything that gets done. It sounds like they're kind of cleaning it up or maybe protecting someone or something. And I think we need to find that right now more than ever. So,
Scott, this is, I mean, again, to have federal authorities essentially telling an elected DA, the hell with you. We're not even going to just answer your questions. This, to me, is an abomination.
Well, as a former prosecutor, this happens a lot more than most people think because you don't see it in a lawsuit. There are other options that the DA has here. He's investigating. I'm surprised there's no civil lawsuit, which on the civil side would get to the bottom of a lot of this. The DA could also put this case into the grand jury and issue grand jury subpoenas to all of these officers and bring them in and just let them tell their story if they're not going to be subjected to an interview or it's limited. Remember, DOJ said to them, we'll let you talk to them, but there are certain questions they will not answer depending on what the investigation was.
But here's the deal, though. But you won't even share the investigation with the DA.
We can't, hold on. We can't control that. So now this DA has some other options.
Right, which is why he's going public. But also, some of the officers also have told his office, they've been told, don't you say anything to the DA.
I understand that. And you know what? We can't change that. So what you do is, you got a grand jury, the family has a possible lawsuit, because civil justice will get to the bottom of a lot of this. I'm surprised there isn't one of those, but this DA could also go above the U.S. attorney, go to DOJ, and see if they could get some relief. There's something they're trying to protect. It's not just because it may be a hate crime or police brutality. There may be something else that's super sensitive in a broader investigation. I'm not defending. What I'm saying to you is this DA chose to sue, but he's got some other options.
Greg, damn that. It's been 2.5 years. It's been 2.5 years.
Right.
Well, I mean, thank goodness a black DA is saying, damn it, y'all gonna answer my question.
A white DA would have the same question.
I ain't buying that one.
There's no race-based prosecution here. Give me a break.
To the point you raised.
Yeah, okay.
One person died, 59 shot.
Black or white DA. But in the interview with Paul Howard, he clearly said a black man was shot and killed 59 times. Greg, go ahead.
It's not a racial fact.
What I'm saying is that race always matters, Scott.
I didn't say it didn't.
Okay, well,
but don't tell me a white prosecutor wouldn't be asking the same questions.
149 years ago, July 1st, 1870.
I was not here on this earth.
No, you weren't. That's why I'm about to tell you.
But you can at least read a history book.
149 years ago,
at the
July 1st, 1870.
Go ahead, Greg, break it down.
The United States Department of Justice was established. It was established under the presidency of the man who took office in 1869, 150 years ago.
And therefore
Wait a minute, hold on.
Therefore.
Hold up.
This is the
First of all, he's about to unpack this thing.
That's okay, Roland.
Go ahead.
This is the genius of ignorance.
Not my ignorance.
Yours in this case.
Not mine.
And everybody else is in this case. When we don't understand the past, we repeat it, brother. Mm-hmm. The Department of Justice was established under Ulysses S. Grant, who won the Civil War in part to go after the Ku Klux Klan. A year later, 1871, was the Ku Klux Klan Act. The Department of Justice's point was to put federal prosecutors in the South to stop racial terror. Now, fast forward to 2019.
Really fast forward.
You've got a department.
Hey. Hold on. Stop. Hold on. You gonna finish your point. First of all, it's my damn show. Take as much time as you need. I'll tell you when to wrap up.
See, this is the thing.
Go ahead, Greg.
You know this.
I ain't gonna let no Kappa tell an Alpha he on the shot clock. Greg, go ahead. I don't care if you the lawyer. Go ahead. I don't care if you the lawyer. Thurgood Marshall was a lawyer. Alpha. Go ahead, Greg.
And you know the reason I got a law degree and didn't practice law is because I understand the political nature of law, brother. You go in the courtroom. I decided not to go in the courtroom. One of the reasons I didn't go in the courtroom is because I understand that behind the law is the politics. And behind the politics is why you get a black DA like Howard. Did you see that little thing on his lapel? Mm-hmm. That was a shield. Mm-hmm. That means he's law enforcement. Jeff Sessions, an unreconstructed racist from Selma, Alabama, is the one and the attitude being driven from the White House that's saying the department that was set up in part to stop racial terror will withdraw.
Well, now, every white prosecutor
come on now. Let's not drill down to individuals.
Well, why not?
We're talking about systems now, law. Wait, you're a lawyer, right?
I'm a lawyer.
Well, if you're a lawyer, then you understand the nature of law. No.
Let's not.
Come on now. Now let's be clear.
So you think the feds just don't want to see any justice done?
What I'm talking about is the nature. What I'm talking about is the nature of government and society. Meaning that what you just said about a civil suit, what you said about a local DA challenging the feds,
grand jury investigation,
all of these things operate within a legal universe.
But they cooperate on a daily basis all around this country. This is a unique case.
Scott, it's not unique. That's my point. That's why if you understand the history, you understand the cycles. We're talking about pendulums. Let's bring it. Let's tie it all together.
You don't think the feds and the state cooperate every day across this country?
Oh, no. Of course they don't cooperate.
Of course they do.
Ralph Bunche said in the 1930s that the Negro is a special ward of the federal government. Meaning what? When the federal government has been used as a tool to
have those cases, but that's not
Scott,
par for course. Or course for par, whatever the term
you
is.
looking at individual trees.
Because that's what
you
the story
can't see
is.
the forest, bro.
I got the forest.
No,
if anybody
clearly
sees
you're not,
the
because you
forest,
lost in the
I've
forest.
been on the defense side and
Here-
This
here-
is one.
here's what we know.
Okay.
Teresa, go ahead.
Yeah, so to your point, Scott, that this is one case. So recently, 2 weeks ago, Roland had Elmer Daniels' lawyer, right, on the show talking about how Elmer Daniels was incarcerated for 39 years, right, because of wrongful injustice and that conviction, right? One of the prime reasons of why Elmer was in Daniel for 39 years of wrongful incarceration was because of the evidence. Now, if Elmer didn't have a private attorney to reach out and investigate to the Department of Justice and the other FBI, Elmer would still be in jail
I agree
today.
with you. I represent people who have been wrongfully incarcerated. I'm talking about this story. Neither one of you all get into this story.
So what this story?
Here is what we know about
That's what black people do
Here's
all the
what
time.
we know
Black
about this
people wanna
story.
tell what
Here
the
is
story
what
is
we
about
know
history and
about
stuff.
this story.
We're talking about this story.
What we know about this story is
brother.
the U.S. Attorney in Atlanta, not helpful.
Not
The
helpful.
feds in D.C., not helpful.
And I gave you
What we
three
do
options that he
know
could do
is
short
they
of a
are
lawsuit.
stymieing this investigation, and like I said to D.A. Howard, keep pressing the case, and we'll be right there with you, covering every aspect. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.